Latkes are a traditional Hanukkah fritter, and typically they're made with potatoes, but this year I'm putting a twist on them and making them with Brussels sprouts. Oh, I'm so excited about them. I'll use 4 egg whites, and I'm only using the egg whites because they make the latkes extra light and crispy. A squeeze of lemon juice will brighten up the Brussels sprout flavor. And I'll whisk this to combine, and then I will add my Brussels sprouts. Now, Brussels sprouts you can either buy shredded or shred them in a food processor or even by hand. And it's important to get them nice and finely shredded so that they cook when they're in the pan. Okay, and for added flavor, I'm gonna chop up an onion and some garlic to go into my mixture. I wanna make sure that I'm adding some bold flavors so that they come through against that fried crust. I'll toss this mixture together and get it evenly coated with the egg whites. Next, I'll add my dry ingredients, all-purpose flour, and this will help thicken up these latkes and bind them all together. Some salt to season it, black pepper, and just a touch of heat with some crushed red pepper. Yum. And now I'll mix this to combine and then we'll be ready to fry. I'm gonna get a nice healthy layer of oil into my frying pan. And then I'm gonna get this hot at medium high. Okay, I'm gonna check to see if the oil's hot enough by dropping in a strand of Brussels sprout and seeing if it sizzles. That's exactly what I'm looking for. That oil is hot, the Brussels sprout is sizzling. I'm ready to fry my latkes. And I'll drop in scoops of the mixture, allowing about an inch of space in between them. And I'm gonna use my spatula to pack it together so that it all sticks. And if any pieces start to come apart, you can just use a spatula to help it back together. I can smell the crispy shell forming. I'll pan fry them for about 2 minutes on each side until they're golden and crispy. I'm gonna flip this one. Oh my gosh, that one looks so good. And then I'll transfer them to my rack over a pan, and that's gonna keep them crispy. These are gonna be so good. And because I'm not serving these for a little while, I'm gonna keep them warm in my oven. And now these are gonna be great by themselves, but what's gonna bring them over the edge is my balsamic Dijon sour cream. Simply combine sour cream, Dijon mustard, honey, and balsamic vinegar.
Mini gingerbread farmhouses, which are a little puffier and softer than your average gingerbread foundation, so they're good for both building and eating. You get the best of both worlds. For the cookie dough, I'll start with my dry ingredients. I have 6 cups of all-purpose flour in my big bowl here. Of course, you have to have ginger. I'll add 4 teaspoons, 2 tablespoons of ground cinnamon, half a teaspoon each of ground cloves and freshly grated nutmeg. For my leaveners, I've got 1 teaspoon of baking soda in here and also 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. I'll season with a teaspoon of salt. I'll whisk this to both combine and also waft some smells up into my nose. My dry ingredients are well combined. I have 1.5 cups of softened unsalted butter. I'll combine it with 1.5 cups of dark brown sugar. I'll get this on my stand mixer and beat it for a couple of minutes until it's pale and fluffy. I'll crack in my 2 eggs, one at a time, just to ensure that they're incorporating smoothly. I'll eyeball in 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and then necessary ingredient for any gingerbread, molasses. I'm adding 1 cup. You see those dark, sweet notes, that gorgeous dark brown signature gingerbread color. I'll gradually add my dry ingredients. I'll divide my dough in half. It'll make it easier to roll out and cut out my shape. And then stick these in the fridge to firm up for an hour. My dough is chilled and I'm ready to roll. My counter is dusted with flour to make sure that the dough doesn't stick. Dust the top with some flour. And then I'll roll this out until it's a 1/4 inch thick. Okay, This looks great. I've got my cookie cutter here. It's a 3-inch square, and I'm gonna use squares for both the sides of the house as well as the roof. I will transfer these now to my baking sheets and then bake at 350 degrees for 12 to 14 minutes until they're slightly puffed and a little bit browned on the bottom. And while they bake, I'll grab my mom to help me decorate. Grammy Jody is here, the cookies are cooled, and we're ready to decorate. So we're gonna build 2 mini farmhouses. You have 2 piping bags.
Okay.
The white one is royal icing. That is the glue that is gonna hold the houses together. You just whip egg whites until they're frothy and starting to turn white, then add loads of powdered sugar and put it in piping bags fitted with brown tips, sealed away from the air so that it doesn't dry out. So we'll first get the roof going. I'll pipe a fat line of royal icing along the edge and then stick on another piece for the roof. And then we'll let this set. You can get going on the walls and then add 2 more walls.
It's really nice.
We can decorate a few to eat, but royal icing is not that great to eat. So we also have classic American buttercream.
Oh, so we can decorate them and eat them now?
Yeah.
What? This is so good.
All right, let's build.
Okay.
To finish these off, we'll attach our roofs and decorate with an assortment of candies.
This is so much fun. This brings back such great memories. That's beautiful.
Dun, da, da, da.
Ta-da. Why, thank you.
Every gingerbread house needs a snowstorm of shredded coconut. Merry Christmas to us.
Merry Christmas.
And may a vacuum cleaner come down the chimney. Tomato jam rugelach. It's so good. I'm starting with my tomato jam. I've got a can of whole peeled tomatoes, even though I'm gonna break them up into little pieces because the whole tomatoes are the best quality, the best flavor. So I'll get in here with my hands and just have this sensory experience. Did I just get that on my shirt? This is why my entire wardrobe is dark, so that I can splatter tomatoes everywhere. I'll scoop in 3/4 cup of brown sugar. So even though this is a savory jam, the sugar will caramelize and allow the jam to thicken. I almost think of this jam like a fancier ketchup. In the way that ketchup is sweet but is a savory food, this jam has that same vibe. A 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt, a little bit of crushed red pepper for heat, and then I'll toss in 8 sprigs of fresh thyme to infuse this jam with cozy herbaceousness. I'll stir this around and bring it to a boil. Okay, now that this is boiling, I'll reduce the temperature so that it simmers and allow it to go for about 1.5 hours until it thickens up into a beautiful, glossy, jam-like consistency. And then I'll stick it in the fridge to cool while I make my dough. Flour, sugar, salt, and Parmesan, butter and cream cheese, and eggs. Then wrap it up and chill in the fridge. To shape the rugelach, I'll roll the dough out into a wide rectangle. You could use store-bought pie dough too. I'm ready to jam. Spread my cooled tomato jam all over, leaving a 1-inch border at the top. Brush it with egg wash to act like glue. Then roll it up tight and finish with more egg wash and everything bagel seasoning. Then slice. You reveal this really pretty swirl. And bake at 375 degrees for 20 minutes until they're golden. These look great. They're golden, the swirl baked up so nicely. I'm smelling that tomato. Okay, I'll plate these up. Rugelach looks so pretty piled up. I love the way that the outside of rugelach is a little bit crispy, but the inside stays soft. Okay, I think I have to taste one. I've been looking forward to these since last Hanukkah. Oh yeah. These are so flaky and crunchy on the outside, still a little soft on the inside. Totally a savory cookie, but also kind of sweet from that jam. Yeah. These are my new favorite Hanukkah cookie. I am making my raspberry rose-filled donuts. To get started, I'm gonna make my dough.
I'm gonna grab a 1/4 cup of warm water, and then I'll combine it with some milk that I have heating up here to about 105 to 110 degrees. That is the optimum temperature for getting yeast to proof. And then I'll add a packet of dry active yeast, and then a teaspoon of sugar will help the yeast proof. I'll swirl this around, and then I'm gonna let it sit for about 5 minutes until it gets foamy on top. And then that's how I know that the yeast is activated. Meanwhile, I'll combine my dry ingredients. I'll add 3½ cups of flour to the bowl of my stand mixer. And then I'll also add a 1/4 cup of sugar. And then I'll add 1 teaspoon of kosher salt. And I'm gonna flavor this dough with a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cardamom. And now I'm gonna add the zest of 1/2 an orange. And the cardamom and the orange and the cinnamon together just scream the holidays. That'll do. And now I'm gonna mix up my eggs. I'm gonna use 1 large egg and 2 egg yolks, which will make this dough extra rich. And now I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. I'll give this a little mix. Now I'm gonna combine my flour mixture, my egg mixture, and my yeast mixture. As you can see, it's gotten nice and foamy. Once this comes together into a stiff dough, I'm gonna start to add some softened butter. I'm gonna add 6 tablespoons of butter, 1 tablespoon at a time, letting it get mostly incorporated before I add each tablespoon. And this is gonna make the dough so moist and good. This is a supermodel dough. It is gorgeous. Okay, I think this dough is ready. I'm gonna form it into a ball, and then I'm gonna let it rise. I'll grab a clean bowl. I'm gonna coat the bowl with oil so that the dough doesn't stick. And I'll add the dough face down so I can zhuzh it around in the oil so that the whole ball of dough is coated. And then I'll flip it over, and now I'm gonna cover it with plastic wrap. So now this is gonna rise in the refrigerator for 8 hours. I've got my buttery donut dough that I made earlier, and I'm gonna turn it out onto my surface. I'll dust it with a little flour, and then I'll roll it out to a 1/2 inch thick. And now I'm gonna cut out 2½ inch circles using my biscuit cutter. I've lined this with parchment so that the dough doesn't stick. Now these are gonna rise for another hour or so until they've doubled in size. I'll just add my raspberry jam to my bowl. And now I'm gonna add a splash of rose water. Just a little bit will give me that floral note that I love. And now I'll just mix it until it's combined. And I'll pour it in. Okay, I'm ready to fry my donuts. These donuts are perfectly puffy. They are ready to fry. I've got some oil heating up in my pot. It's heating up to 350 degrees and it's a few inches of oil. And I always like heating in cast iron because it holds the heat really well. And now I'm gonna fry my donuts in batches for about 1.5 minutes on each side until golden. I'll gently lower these in. And I can already see that the bottoms are starting to turn golden. I'm gonna transfer them to a wire rack so that any excess oil can drip off. And then I'm gonna spread a little bit of my glaze right on top. I'll go almost to the edge. First, I'm gonna grab a long pointy knife so that I can get a hole in the top, just to make space for the jam. And I like filling my donuts from the top down. I love the way it looks, and it also holds the jam. And now I'll grab my piping bag and fill the hole with my raspberry rose filling. And now I'm gonna sprinkle on some dried rose petals. These will add an extra special little touch on top. I'll stick these right on. I'm making my hazelnut Gelt cookies, which are super thick and nutty and topped with sparkly chocolate coins. To get started on my dough, I'll mix up my dry ingredients. And I'll scoop in 1 1/3 cups of hazelnut flour, which is really finely ground hazelnuts. It helps with the structure and moisture of the cookie. And then 3½ cups of all-purpose flour. This is just a variation on my go-to sugar cookie cutout recipe. And I just love it because it stays really nice and thick. Teaspoon of baking powder and 3/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. And I'll whisk this all together. I'll mix up my wet ingredients now. I'll get 1 cup of softened unsalted butter.
And combine this with 2/3 of a cup of granulated sugar and 2/3 of a cup of powdered sugar. I love the combination of the two. The powdered sugar yields a little bit of a fluffier, softer cookie. I'm adding the zest of one orange, and it's just gonna perk these flavors right up. I'll get this onto my stand mixer and beat it until it's light and fluffy. That orange zest smells awesome. I'll crack my eggs and then add them one at a time, beating well after each. I'll drizzle in a teaspoon of vanilla. And now I can add my dry ingredients. I'll do this gradually so that they don't go flying everywhere. That hazelnut is really nice. The dough is coming together. The butter smells really good. And now my favorite thing about this cookie recipe, well, other than eating them, is that I don't have to refrigerate the dough before cutting out the shapes. You could if you wanted to. You could get ahead and stick the dough in the refrigerator, but I'm impatient. I just want to eat these really soon. So I'll grab a rolling pin and my baking sheet. I'll dust my counter with a little flour so the dough doesn't stick. Oh, this is such a pretty dough. Ready for this plop. I'll gather it up. Oh yeah, that's nice and soft. Now, my other favorite part about this cookie is that it is destined to be super thick. So I'm rolling this out gently and evenly, and I'll rotate it every so often to ensure that it's not sticking. If it is, I can just dust with a little more flour. To punch out my shapes, I've got a 2.5-inch circle cutter, and I'll just cut out my dough. That is the perfect thickness. Look at those clean edges. It's what I like to see in a cookie. I'll just keep punching out my circles and then spacing them 1 inch apart. These cookies look rich. I'll get them in the oven now at 350 degrees for about 12 minutes until they are ever so slightly browned on the bottom. That will ensure that they're still soft in the middle. My cookies are cooling. They smell hazelnutty and amazing. And now I'm ready to make their homemade Gelt hats. I've got some white chocolate chips here that I'll melt in a double boiler, which is a pot of simmering water with a heat-safe bowl on top. It's important to do that with chocolate so that you don't burn it. And I'll just stir this up as it gets melty and smooth. It's already starting to melt. And you can use any kind of chocolate too. Maybe you want to make some extra valuable Gelt and use fancy chocolate. Okay, this is melted and smooth and ready to decorate. So this is so easy. I'm gonna take a teaspoon of chocolate, dollop it in the center of one of my cookies. I'll swirl it around to make a coin. That is one valuable piece of chocolate money. And sprinkle on some sprinkles. Ta-da! Just like that. Okay, I'll decorate the rest so we can get our dreidel on. So much funica! All right, I'm going in. They're so soft and hazelnutty. That's my kind of currency. I am making pumpkin lasagna. It's super hearty and cheesy. It's got crispy, salty bacon, loads of bitter chard, and it's all held together by a creamy, no-cook pumpkin sauce. To start, I'm crisping up bacon. Bacon and pumpkin together are a match made in savory heaven. Now that I've rendered my bacon fat, I'm gonna use it to cook up my veggies. I have 2 big onions that are thinly sliced. A good pinch of salt will help them soften down. I'll cook these just for about 6 to 8 minutes until they're soft. These are smelling really nice. I'll add a few bunches of chopped bitter chard and let it cook down. Okay, another pinch of salt will help draw the moisture out and allow it to soften. I love a veggie-packed lasagna because everything is good when it's underneath a blanket of noodles and cheese. I'll grate in some fresh nutmeg for warmth, and then let these veggies drain while I put together my other layers. Time for the star of this lasagna, the pumpkin. It comes from a can. This sauce is so easy. I'll thin it out with 1 cup of low-sodium chicken stock and 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream for added richness, and a tablespoon of chipotles and adobo sauce, which are so smoky and a little bit spicy, but not overly so. Because in order for pumpkin to really lean savory, it's gotta have something smoky, something salty, the bacon, and something bitter, the chard. Salt. a teaspoon of it. I'll mix this together. So that's it. I'll do the cheese layer now. I'll start with 1.5 pounds of whole milk ricotta. You gotta have that fluffy layer in a lasagna. I'll crack in an egg so that this layer can set. And then 1/2 cup of grated parm and some freshly chopped parsley. Lasagna sometimes uses a few more bowls than I want it to, but then when I have a gigantic casserole of lasagna in my fridge for days after eating it, it's all worth it. Okay, I've got all my components ready. It's time to assemble. First layer is a cup of sauce to prevent any noodles from sticking to the bottom of the pan. And top with 3 no-boil lasagna noodles. And then I'll spread on 1/3 of the ricotta mixture. I wanna cover the entirety of the noodle. That's the secret to no-boil noodles, is you really gotta cover them with stuff so that they actually absorb moisture and get cooked. 1/3 of my veggies. Chard smells good. And 1/3 of the bacon, which I'll just crumble all over. Bacon and chard together are really nice. These will punctuate the bites with crispy saltiness. And then 1 cup of mozzarella cheese. And it's important to have the mozzarella go all the way to the edge so that it gets crispy. Okay, I'll repeat these layers 2 more times and then finish with noodles, the rest of the pumpkin sauce, loads of mozzarella cheese, and Parmesan. Oh yeah. I'll cover it up with foil, and then this will go in at 425 degrees for 30 minutes, and then I'll uncover it and bake for an additional 15 minutes until it gets golden and bubbly on top. I think I'm hearing that cheese bubble. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, all of the brown cheese splotches. I'll finish with a sprinkle of crushed red pepper for an extra hit of spiciness. I think I'm just gonna risk burning my mouth because it smells too good not to taste it. I'm going for a crispy edge. It's gooey, it's cheesy. That little sweetness from the pumpkin is so good.
Peppermint latke ice cream sundaes. These are a variation on the latkes that I make every year for Hanukkah, and they're inspired by that really delicious thing where you dip your fries in the milkshake. So it's that delicious combination of salty and sweet, and I think you're gonna love them. If you're cooking along with me, get the shredding attachment hooked up to your food processor, and then also have some cheesecloth sitting in a strainer that's set above a bowl. Let's get started. Put the top on your food processor, and now we're gonna shred up our russet potatoes, and I don't even peel them. The peel looks really pretty, and it's fiber, and it's easier if you just skip the peeling. And if you don't have a food processor with a shredder attachment, you could also grate these by hand on the big holes of a box grater or use a mandolin. I just use a food processor because it is so darn quick and easy. Now, once all of your potatoes are shredded, you can dump the potatoes into the cheesecloth lined strainer. How pretty do your potatoes look? I love these big, thick strands of shredded potato. So dump the potatoes right in. And now I want you to sprinkle with a few good pinches of kosher salt. And what the salt is gonna do is it's gonna draw out the moisture in the potato strands, and that moisture is gonna fall down to the bowl. And drawing the moisture out of the potatoes is gonna help get a crispy latke. So for me, the ideal latke is crispy on the outside and still a little bit soft and creamy on the inside. And so in order to get that creaminess, I do not want you to skip this step. I also want you to grab your lemon. Adding lemon juice to this mixture is gonna prevent the potatoes from oxidizing and turning that weird grayish brownish color. So give it a roll, which will help release its juices, and then cut it in half and squeeze it right over the potatoes. And you can put your hand underneath when you're squeezing it to catch any of the lemon seeds. And just let the juice fall through your fingers. You can toss the potatoes around to make sure that the salt and the lemon juice gets evenly distributed. And then let this sit for a bit to allow that moisture to come out. Now, as your potato mixture is sitting, you can get your oil heating up. So get a nice large frying pan heating up over medium-high, and then add a thick layer of oil, about 1/4 inch thick. And I'm using just a neutrally flavored oil here, any that has a high smoke point. So canola oil or vegetable oil will work. And when I was little, I was never patient enough to let the oil heat up. And you know where that got me? It got me really soggy, oily latkes. You don't want that. You want your oil to be hot enough so that it fries your latkes up really nice and crispy. So gather the cheesecloth by the ends and use your hands to squeeze out any of that excess moisture. You see all of that coming out of there? We're earning our latkes. Once you've squeezed out as much moisture as you can, get rid of it. And then we're gonna use this same bowl to mix up the rest of our mixture. So add the potato mixture to the bowl. And then grab your 2 eggs. And these are gonna help the latke mixture stay together. And then also add 1/3 cup of flour. And this will also help the mixture stay all together. And now mix it up. So latkes are the quintessential Hanukkah food. On Hanukkah, it's tradition to eat foods that are fried in oil to commemorate the miracle of Hanukkah. Traditionally, latkes are served with sour cream and applesauce, but there's 8 nights of Hanukkah, and so usually by the 8th night, I'm looking for other fun ways to eat my latkes. And that's when I came up with this Latke Sundae. Once your mixture is combined, you can test to see if your oil is hot enough, and to do that, grab 1 strand of the potato and then add it to the oil, and if it sizzles, it's ready. That's a nice little sizzle. I think we're ready. Grab an ice cream scoop. And I like using an ice cream scoop because it's easier to portion out the latkes so that they're all evenly sized. And then cram your mixture into a scoop. And then gently add to the pan. We'll do a few more and fry these in batches. It's important not to overcrowd the pan because if you do, it'll lower the temperature of the oil and then it'll make your latkes taste oily and soggy. Grab your spatula. You can use your spatula to flatten them out slightly. Don't flatten them out too much because a thick latke is a good latke. I like about a 1/2 inch thick of a latke. Now once these are all flattened out, you're gonna let these fry on both sides until they're golden brown and crispy. So a few minutes on each side. So if you guys are hosting big parties this year for the holidays, latkes are actually the type of thing that can be prepped ahead. What you want to do is once you're done frying your latkes, transfer them directly to a pan that's lined with foil. You don't want that excess oil to drip off. You want to keep it. What you do is you put the latkes in the refrigerator or the freezer until it's party time, and then when it's party time, reheat them in the oven, and that excess oil will actually refry the edges of the latkes and make them hot and crispy again. The hardest part for me in this recipe is being patient and letting the latkes get golden and crispy. It's always worth it. So don't fuss with them too much. Just let them do their magic. So when you have a beautiful brown color on the bottom of your latke, you can carefully flip it over and get that same gorgeous color on the other side. Ah, how perfect is that? Do yours look nice and golden brown? I hope so. These look gorgeous, and now we're gonna let these cook for a few minutes on the other side until they're just as golden. These have reached peak crispiness on both sides. They're ready to come out of the pan. And transferring them to a wire rack is gonna allow any excess oil to drip off, and it's gonna help keep them crispy on the bottom. Oh, these look delicious. I hope yours do too. I've got enough latkes here to make our sundae, but if you wanna make more, press pause now, keep on frying in batches, and then meet back up when you're ready. It's time to assemble. Grab your chocolate ice cream, or any flavor of ice cream will do, and some chocolate sauce, whipped cream, all of your favorite sundae toppings. I'm very excited to eat these. I hope you are too. So, to assemble, put a couple of latkes on a plate. Grab an ice cream scoop. And add a big scoop of ice cream onto each latke. And you gotta work fast because you want the latkes to stay hot and the ice cream to stay cold. Get some whipped cream on there. Oh yeah, it works. Chocolate sauce. Nice drizzly drizz. And peppermint around the holidays is gorgeous and perfect, and it adds great crunch. So sprinkle a few of those on there as well. How pretty are these? The unicorn of all holiday desserts, my peppermint latke ice cream sundae. I'm gonna dig in right now. These get a little messy in the best way possible. It's so good. They're salty and crispy and creamy and sweet. I love these a latke, and I hope you do too. I always make edible gifts for my friends and family, and they are going to love my pistachio Linzer cookies. So the first thing I'm gonna do is make my sugar cookies. I have 1 cup of softened, unsalted butter here, and I'm gonna add it to my stand mixer. And now I'll add a cup of sugar. And now I'll add 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. I'm gonna cream together the butter and the sugar for a few minutes until light and fluffy. This is pale and fluffy, and now I'm ready for the egg. And I'm gonna crack it into a little bowl first because it's so much easier in case I get a little bit of shell in here to fish it out from this bowl. And then I'll also grab vanilla and almond extract. I'll add 1½ teaspoons of vanilla extract and ½ teaspoon of almond extract. I'm gonna add 3 cups of flour gradually. I don't want it to fly everywhere from the mixer running. And once this first cup of flour is mostly combined, I can add my second cup. The dough is looking great. I'm gonna scrape down the sides to make sure all of the ingredients, like this flour and the butter that's sticking, get incorporated into the dough. I'll dust the top of the dough with flour. And then I'm gonna roll out this dough so that it's about 3/16 of an inch. Don't be afraid to get out your ruler. And now I'll use an offset spatula to transfer the cookies to the cookie sheet. Now, whenever I'm making Linzers, I cut out the top cookies first because once I cut out my stars, I'll use those scraps to then re-roll to make the bottom cookies. So I'm gonna cut stars out right from the center of the cookies. Now I'm gonna re-roll my scraps to cut out the bottom cookie. You never wanna waste cookie dough. And just like the top cookies, I'll roll out this dough until it's 3/16 of an inch thick, and then I'll cut out my bottom circles. They're gonna bake now at 350 for 10 minutes until they're just set, but still pale. They are gonna make the tastiest homemade gifts. I'm gonna let them cool while I make my white chocolate pistachio filling. This filling is beautiful for the holidays. It's sweet and chocolatey, and it's a departure from traditional Linzer jam filling, but I love the way it hardens. It makes these cookies sturdy enough for shipping. I have some white chocolate chips here that I'm gonna melt in my double boiler. And I'll stir it with a spatula as it melts to make sure that it's really smooth and melty. Now I'm gonna tint it with a couple of drops of green food coloring to enhance the color of the pistachios. Oh, that's a perfect pistachio color. And now I'll add ½ cup of finely ground pistachios. I'll grab one of the circle cookies and add a nice plop of the filling right to the center, and then I'll spread it around all the way out to the edge. And then I'll grab one of the star cookies and smush it right on top. And then I'll sprinkle on some of my crushed pistachios. And I have pretty gold stars, perfect for the holidays. Just like that. How adorable. We are gonna be making Hanukkah donuts or Sufganiyot. So if you're cooking along with me, make sure you have some oil heating up in a pot. You want it to heat to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Also have a pastry bag fitted with a tip. Anywhere between a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch is good, and it can be a round tip or a star tip. Let's get started. The hardest part, it's opening up a can of store-bought biscuit dough. I'm using these big buttermilk biscuits. The holidays are so busy, so I will take any easy hack like this. We're gonna fry them in multiple batches. We don't wanna overcrowd our pot because the temperature of the oil is gonna drop, and that's actually gonna make your donuts feel oily and greasy, which you don't want. How beautiful is that? So now gently transfer them to your pan. Now let's let these cool for a bit while we make our filling. Dump the cream cheese right into the bowl. We're gonna add some cranberry sauce. Add a nice big plop, and then mix it up. Gonna be delicious. So traditionally, Sufganiyot are filled with jelly. I like bulking it up with cream cheese to add that richness and tanginess and texture. We are ready to fill. Grab your piping bag and plop your filling right in. Twist the top so that the filling doesn't come out the back as you're squeezing. Stick the tip right into the top of the donuts and squeeze. And then you can add a little extra to the top. These are the best when they're fresh. So ideally you should eat these within an hour of them being made. Grab a little sifter like this, and don't be shy with the powdered sugar here. The biscuits aren't really sweet by themselves. Look how pretty that is. There you have it, our cranberry cream cheese stuffed Sufganiyot. They smell so good, and they weren't even that hard to make. Hi everybody, it's Molly Yeh from Girl Meets Farm here, and today I am gonna show you how to make my gingerbread snack mix. It's crunchy and sweet, and it has pockets of creaminess from tahini and some nice warmth thanks to gingerbread spice and ginger snaps. It's inspired by this snack mix that I ate all the time when I was a kid. It was always at parties, and it's just addictive. And it also makes a great gift. So I'm gonna show you how to package it all cutely. So if you're cooking along with me, make sure you've got your favorite holiday sprinkles. Mine have little gingerbread men inside. And let's get started. So get a pot heating over medium heat and add 1/2 stick of butter. Get this melting. Do you use a lot of butter around the holidays? I use tons of it. And as this is melting, you can add your chocolate chips. Any kind of chocolate chip will do. I really like using milk chocolate chips. I love milk chocolate because of how sweet it is. Next, add 1/2 cup of tahini, which is gonna add delicious nuttiness. Tahini is ground sesames, and it's smooth and rich and creamy. If you don't have tahini, you could totally use peanut butter or almond butter. Any kind of nut or seed butter will do with this, okay? Next, add a good pinch of salt. This will bring out all of the flavors. Add 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And you could eyeball this. This isn't rocket science. And then 1.5 teaspoons of gingerbread spice. This makes this version of this snack mix scream holidays. And if you haven't opened up your gingerbread spice since last year, I would recommend replacing it because spices do tend to go bad pretty easily and they just lose their flavor, they lose their character. So do yourself a favor, get a new jar of gingerbread spice for the season. Your flavors will be brighter because of it. Now stir this together as it melts. This comes together really quickly. Can you smell that chocolate? This is gonna become one of your favorite new no-bake holiday desserts. It's definitely one of mine. And it's dangerous. Whenever I make it, I have to get somebody to get it away from me because I can't stop eating it. Now, once all the chocolate has melted and it's nice and smooth, you can turn your heat off. And if you don't want to do this on a stove, you could also melt it in a microwave. Every 30 seconds, you should stop it and give it a little stir. And keep on doing that until the mixture is smooth and melted. Look how smooth and melty that is. And now grab your checkered rice cereal. And you can also grab your ginger snap cookies. We're gonna add those later. And also grab a large bowl. If you have one with a lid, that's even better. Add your cereal to the bowl. And then pour in the chocolate tahini mixture. This looks so good. Now stir it to combine. I like it when this mixture forms nice big clumps. Those are the best bites. While we're stirring, be careful not to crush the cereal. You want to keep it intact. Now, once you have combined the cereal and your chocolate tahini mixture, grab your powdered sugar and sprinkle in about 3/4 of a cup. It seems like a lot of powdered sugar at first, but it'll make it really good. And stir it around. And once it's mostly combined, you can add another 3/4 of a cup of powdered sugar. And at this point, I find it's easiest to toss it by putting the lid on the bowl and just shaking it up and down. You can also make this in a huge zip top bag. So get the lid on and then shake it. This is a heavy bowl. We're earning it. How is it looking? Do you guys think we should taste it now and not even wait for the recipe to be finished? Yes. Oh, that's good. All right. So you want to make sure that all of the chocolatey bits are coated in powdered sugar. So if you see any bits that are kind of darker and you can see a lot of the chocolate, toss it a little bit so that it gets coated in the sugar. This is so good. It's looking and tasting great, isn't it? Right. Now to finish this off, let's crumble in some ginger snap cookies. These are gonna go so well with that gingerbread flavor. Now with these ginger snaps, add as many as you want. I'm using store-bought. They're extra crispy, but you can also use homemade. And now let's add a little color with some candy-coated chocolates. And sprinkles. Just sprinkle them right in. Are you guys having as much fun as I am? Now toss these to combine, and that's it. Well, and then we devour. And how fun and colorful is that? And easy. Okay, this is the best piece. When it comes together like this, it's like a snowball. Whoever gets that piece is lucky. It's gonna be. Now we're gonna make this into cute gifts for this holiday season. So grab a cute jar. Any jar is made cuter with an adorable tag and a bow. Just an FYI. And you can use your scoop left over from the powdered sugar. I love that gingerbread spice in there. It's so warm and just screams holidays. I don't know if I even want to give this away. It's so good. I hope you guys enjoyed making our gingerbread snack mix. It is the ultimate edible gift. Your friends and family are gonna love you even more if you give this to them. Enjoy, you guys. It's time for the main attraction, the star of the show, my sweet and smoky turkey. And I'm grilling it, so I'm gonna free up oven space, and that grill is just gonna add to the smoky flavor. To start, I'm gonna make a rub that's gonna infuse so much flavor into my turkey. Now I'm making my rub in a food processor. I start by quartering half a red onion and peeling 6 cloves of garlic, 3 for the rub and 3 for the inside of the bird. 1 tablespoon of guajillo chilies for a little heat, 2 tablespoons of sweet paprika, 1 tablespoon of tomato paste, and a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. Because apples in the fall, it all makes sense. Half a teaspoon of ground caraway seeds. Love the bitterness that adds. Half a teaspoon of cumin. Half a teaspoon of coriander. And for a little bit of heat, 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. I'm gonna add a drizzle of olive oil. It'll make it easier to spread all over the bird. And now I'll blend it into a paste. I'm gonna add a little more olive oil because it's looking a little dry. I'm gonna scrape down the sides to make sure that everything gets evenly blended. Okay, this turkey has been dry brined, and all that means is that last night I sprinkled it with some salt and pepper, and that's gonna help tenderize the meat and create a really juicy bird. In the cavity, I'm stuffing in the other half of the red onion, 3 peeled cloves of garlic, half an orange, and half a lemon. And all of this is gonna flavor it from the inside out. A bouquet of fresh thyme is going to add wonderful herbaceousness. Yum, I'm smelling it already. And now I am going to truss the legs. Give it a bow, because it's pretty. And now I'm gonna grab my spice paste. I'm gonna come in here with my hands and just gonna rub this goodness all over the turkey, just making sure that it gets in all of the creases and folds. I don't want any bit of this turkey to be left unflavored. I'm adding about a cup of stock to the bottom of the roasting pan and a cup of wine, and those are gonna get some additional flavor into the turkey as well as moisture. Great. Next, I'm gonna tent it with foil, and this foil will stay on for the first 45 minutes of cooking, and that'll help get an even cook on the bird. My grill is preheated. I'm gonna cook this at 350 for a couple of hours, and then about halfway through, I'll take off the foil so that we can get some crispy skin, and then add a couple more cups of stock. I am so excited. I'm adding a little honey glaze to the turkey so the skin will caramelize as it cooks. We're just gonna make a simple gravy. I'll make a roux with the pan drippings, and then we'll add broth and then zhuzh it up.
Perfect.
So you got the thyme there. I am adding some flour to the pan. I'm gonna stir it as you're pouring it in so that it thickens evenly.
Okay.
I'm gonna add just a tablespoon of red wine vinegar to round out those flavors, and it just kind of makes it more balanced.
It does. It just adds a little hit of something at the end that's just delightful.
I think we'll just add some of this thyme.
Okay.
We'll add most of it to the gravy and then leave some for sprinkling on top.
How pretty is that? I cannot wait to try this.
Oh my gosh,
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
So today I'm making my pretzel stuffing with mustard and beer. It's gonna be sweet and tangy and soft and salty. I am obsessed with this stuffing. To start, I'm gonna chop up an onion and 4 stalks of celery, and I'm gonna finely chop this so it mixes nicely with my stuffing. And same for my celery, I'm gonna use 4 stalks. And I don't mind using the leaves. I know a lot of people get rid of them, but they have more flavor there. Okie doke. My vegetables are chopped. I'm gonna get some butter heating into a pan so that I can cook my vegetables and reserve the rest to pour over the stuffing before it goes into the oven. I have my pan at a medium high, and now I'm gonna add my vegetables. I'll season these with a good pinch of salt to bring out those flavors and also to help them soften. I'll stir them around, and I'm just gonna cook these about 7 to 10 minutes until they're soft and translucent, and in the meantime, I'll mix together my wet ingredients. I'll crack in 2 eggs, and these will help bind my mixture together. 1.5 cups of chicken stock, which will add loads of flavor. And for vegetarian stuffing, vegetable stock will absolutely work. And now the fun part, I'm gonna add 1/4 cup of mustard because you really cannot have pretzels without mustard. And now I'm gonna add a little bit of beer here. This is a German lager, and this is gonna add acidity, it's gonna add tanginess, and any alcohol in here will cook right out. And next I'll grab some honey. A couple tablespoons is perfect. I'll whisk it all together. The last thing I'm gonna do is chop up some parsley before I combine everything. Okay, then now it's time to combine everything. So I have a bowl of torn pretzel bread here that has been dried out in an oven at 200 degrees for an hour. And that helps maintain the structure of the bread when it gets combined with the liquid. This is a great way to use stale bread too, and you don't have to use pretzel bread. I'm gonna get my vegetables. I'm gonna pour these directly into the bowl with the bread. So the liquid really softens this bread a lot, and it's important that the bread doesn't get mushy and too soft, so that's why it's good to toast the bread before mixing it with this liquid. The mixture is gonna still look a little bit liquidy when you pour it into the pan, but the bread is gonna continue to absorb that liquid in the oven, so that's what you want. The best part, I'm gonna pour more butter over it. This will bake at 375 for about 45 minutes until it's set and golden brown and a little crispy on top. I'm gonna make my roasted spiced chicken and apples, which is gonna be the centerpiece for the holiday table. To start off, I have some whole spices toasting in a dry skillet, and this just brings out their flavor. I've got some black pepper, cardamom, coriander, cumin, and cloves. Now that my spices are toasted, I'll pour them into my spice grinder to blend them up. Got a whiff of the cardamom. This looks perfect. And now I'm gonna combine this with a few more spices. I've got paprika, cinnamon, and nutmeg. And the paprika is gonna add great smokiness, and the cinnamon and nutmeg are gonna add awesome warmth. And this is my version of Baharat, which is an all-purpose Middle Eastern spice blend that is great on vegetables and meats. I think cinnamon in savory dishes is an underrated move. Next, I'll grate in some nutmeg. I kind of think of nutmeg as a smoother cinnamon. It just amps up the cinnamon. I'll give this a mix. Because I'm gonna add it directly to the chicken, I'm also gonna add a lot of salt. So I'll stir this in. So now I'm gonna sprinkle my spice and salt mixture all over the chicken. Make sure you get every nook and cranny. And I'm also gonna sprinkle some in the cavity of the chickens. Now these are gonna sit in the refrigerator overnight uncovered, which will help the skin get crispy. Move over, holiday ham. These birds are my new holiday jam. Now I just need to roast them. But before I do that, I'm chopping up some apples and onions to scatter around the chickens. And as they roast, they're gonna soak up all of the juices from the chicken and get so delicious. I'm using Gala apples here. And now I'll quarter 2 onions. And these will also add a little sweetness. Now I'm ready to grab my chickens. My chickens were in the refrigerator overnight, but now I've let them come to room temperature, which will help them roast evenly. And now I'm gonna stuff the cavities with half my onions. And this will allow flavor to get into the chicken from the inside out. And I'm also gonna add some thyme and fresh rosemary. Oh, that's a good smell. And then I'll sprinkle the apples and the onions all around the edge. And now I'll add a couple of pinches of salt to the apples and onions. And then a little bit of sugar will enhance their sweetness. And lastly, a drizzle of olive oil will help the apples and the onions roast. I love the colors on this pan. Okay, these chickens are gonna roast now at 450 degrees for about an hour until the juices run clear. I think they're ready. Oh my goodness! And look at how crispy that skin looks. Oh, and I just got a whiff of that Baharat. I'm gonna carve them now, but first I wanna let them rest, and that allows the juices to redistribute. So I'll transfer them to the cutting board first. And now I'll finish off the apples and onions with a splash of apple cider vinegar. That'll brighten things up. I'll toss these around. The apples are so nice and smushy. And I wanna make sure that the juices kind of get all up and mingle with the apples and the onions. Now I just have to carve up my chickens. And I'm gonna start with their legs and thighs. Next, I'm gonna cut off the breast. And now I'm gonna cut the breast into 3 pieces so that everybody gets a piece of skin. My spinach and feta arugula are flaky and golden, and they've got a cream spinach filling on the inside. So to start, I'm making my spinach filling. I've got some butter and onion cooking away in my saute pan. And I'm just cooking this onion until it's soft and translucent. And now I'm gonna add lots of chopped garlic. I'm gonna cook this for just about a minute until I can start to smell the garlic. And then I'll add 2 tablespoons of flour, which will help thicken my spinach mixture. And I wanna cook this for another minute just to get rid of that floury flavor. All right, I have frozen spinach here that I thawed and drained, and I'll just add this right to the pan. I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of heavy cream. This is a really nice, rich cream spinach. And I'll stir this in. And that flour is gonna thicken the heavy cream and hold everything together. And now I'll add 3/4 of a cup of crumbled feta. Feta is nice and salty. It'll make all of these flavors pop. I'm gonna brighten this up with a squeeze of lemon juice. Just a bit. I don't want it to taste lemony. I just want it to be brighter. And then a few shakes of hot sauce, just for some heat. I'll get some pepper in there. Let me stir this around. Oh, this is looking good. It's really creamy. Needs a little bit more salt. Just get a nice pinch in there. Okay, this is ready to go. I'm gonna let it cool slightly while I grab my pie dough. Homemade or store-bought will do. And I rolled these out until they're about 11 or 12 inches in diameter. And now I'll spread my spinach filling right on top of the pie dough. Now I'll use my offset spatula to spread the spinach mixture all over the top of the pie dough in one thin layer. Okay, this looks great. Now I'm gonna cut each of my circles into 8 equal wedges, and then I'll roll them up. And now starting at the wide edge, I'll roll into the center. Just like so. Okay, now I'm gonna grab some parchment from my baking sheet. And I'll arrange these. And to finish off my arugula, I'll brush them with egg wash, which will help them get golden and shiny on top. And lastly, a pinch of flaky salt. Now these will bake at 425 for about 20 minutes until they're golden brown. I'm gonna check on my arugula now. Oh. They smell like buttery pie dough, and they look gorgeous. Okay, I'm gonna let these cool slightly, and then they'll be ready for the party. Brussels sprout casserole, which is comforting and decadent, and the whole thing gets covered in crispy, salty onions. Plus, it's a snap to make. I just throw everything into a pot and bake. So I've got this pot heating over medium heat. I'm gonna add a couple of tablespoons of olive oil. I've got my 2 pounds of Brussels sprouts here that are quartered. And for me, Brussels sprouts have always been the perfect Thanksgiving vegetable, not the green beans. Brussels sprouts are in season in Thanksgiving, so it just makes sense. I'll dump these right in. They're already starting to crackle and pop. And I'll stir them around and just let them get some color all over the outside. These are looking glossy and golden and gorgeous. I'm gonna add 4 tablespoons of butter now. There is no shortage of butter on Thanksgiving in our house. I'll let this melt. Okay, this smell is Thanksgiving now. It wasn't just Brussels sprouts, it's Brussels sprouts and butter. I've got some leeks, which I've soaked and rinsed, and these will add some nice sweetness. This is a lot of veggies, but they all cook down. I'll stir these around and let the leeks soak up that butter. I'll add a sprinkle of salt. Add some pepper. Oh my gosh, it smells so good right now. Thanksgiving perfume, get on it. Okay, while these continue to soften, I'll add some sliced garlic and earthy thyme. There are so many delicious flavors in this dish. Now that my veggies are soft, I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of flour. And this is gonna combine with the butter and the oil to create a roux that's gonna thicken up my liquids. And it's gonna make this so creamy. I'm gonna stir this around and let it cook for about a minute so that that flour flavor can cook off. I'll add 2 cups of low sodium chicken stock and let everything thicken up and get cozy. All right, call me crazy, but I feel like the true MVP of Thanksgiving is heavy cream. It makes the vegetables better. You put it on the pumpkin pie. It's everywhere. I'm stirring an entire cup of heavy cream into this thing. And I've brought it to room temperature just so that it cooks evenly. It was looking great already. Now it's looking great plus. There's so much flavor in my hands right now. I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese that's been grated. That just adds that salty umami-ness. A couple of teaspoons of Dijon mustard will add that zippiness that makes Brussels sprouts sing. And lastly, some lemon zest. Let me stir this all together. Oh, that cream is really thickened up. This is so decadent. And now for the best part, the crispy fried onions. And I'm not gonna hold back here. I want a thick layer of crunchiness on top. I'll spread these out. This is beautiful. It's gonna get even more beautiful in the oven though. I'm gonna bake it at 400 degrees for 20 minutes until it's golden and bubbly around the edges. I'm gonna need my eating pans for this one. These Brussels sprouts are a good time, if I do say so myself.
I'm always up for a good time.
Sugar cookie mini cakes. They're basically like 3-dimensional sugar cookies, and they are so delicious and tons of fun to make. We're gonna be using some of my best baking tips to get you through the Christmas cookie season with minimal stress. So if you're baking along with me, make sure you have the proper tools. Get your oven preheated to 350. Have a baking sheet ready with some parchment paper so that the cookies don't stick. You're gonna want some cookie cutters. This set of nested cookie cutters is perfect because you're gonna want all different sizes. A piping bag fitted with a nice large tip that's round, and a rolling pin or a wine bottle if you don't have a rolling pin, and either a stand mixer or a hand electric mixer. Are you guys ready? Okay, let's do this. So first, grab a medium-sized bowl for all of your dry ingredients. And in this bowl, add 3 cups of all-purpose flour, I always like to mix up my dry ingredients first when I'm baking. It makes the process cleaner. You have less dishes to do because then you can use the same measuring spoons for the wet ingredients. You don't have to wash them off in between. And keep your flour on standby too, because when we roll out the sugar cookies, you're gonna wanna use the flour to dust your work surface so that the cookies don't stick. And when you're measuring out your flour, fluff it up first with your measuring cup to aerate it. That way you won't get too much flour. And then scoop it, pile it in, and level it off with your finger or a knife so that you have exactly 1 cup. Okay. Stick your flour aside, but again, don't let it go too far. And now grab your baking powder. And while I'm at the pantry, I'm also gonna get my vanilla extract and almond extract. Adding baking powder to your cookie dough is gonna help the cookies puff up in the oven, and that's gonna make the texture a little bit softer and fluffier. Add 3/4 teaspoon of baking powder. And 3/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. It's always important to salt your sweets. That brings out all the flavors and it just tastes really good. And now give these dry ingredients a whisk to combine. It's important to get these combined because you do not want to get any large bits of baking powder or salt in a bite. If you've ever bitten into a cookie where the baking powder isn't fully incorporated, it's not fun. This would be an awesome activity for a holiday party. I love hosting cookie decorating parties. Bake all the cookies first and then get tons of frosting and decorations and stick them on the table, and people can just hang out and decorate cookies together and eat the cookies, and it's so much fun. Okay, how are your dry ingredients looking? Are they combined? Good. Grab your big bowl now. We can set this aside. And now add 1 cup of softened unsalted butter to your bowl. This is so much butter on this plate. This is for the frosting. And to this bowl, add 1 cup of sugar. And now grab your hand mixer and beat the butter and the sugar together until it's pale and fluffy. This will take a couple minutes. Every so often, you can stop and use your rubber spatula to scrape down the sides, and that's to make sure that all of the butter and the sugar gets incorporated. This cookie dough is just a basic sugar cookie dough. You can use this for any kind of cutout, even sandwich cookies or Linzer cookies. It's really delicious and super easy to make. Now, once your mixture is looking nice and fluffy, grab your egg. And crack your egg right in. And then also add 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And then 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract. Now, I love the flavor of almond extract. I could have it in every single thing and not get sick of it. Oh, it smells so good. If you're not wild about it, just use vanilla, that's fine. Now mix this until the egg and the extracts have combined into the butter and sugar. And now it's time to add our dry ingredients. So gradually add the flour mixture. Do it in batches just to make sure that it doesn't go flying everywhere in the kitchen. So add about 1/3 of it first. And now we'll mix that in. And start your mixer on low. If you put it on too high right off the bat, flour will be flying everywhere in your kitchen, and you don't want that. And once all the flour is combined, or most of it at least, you can add another 1/3 of the flour mixture. And again, mix it in. Can you smell that vanilla? It smells so good. I love sugar cookies, especially around the holidays. I like them even more than gingerbread cookies. Add the rest of your dry ingredients. And now mix this in. How is your dough looking? Okay, if it's looking crumbly, that's how it should look. Once everything is combined, I want you to stop your mixer, and then you can just use your hands to bring everything together into a dough. Doesn't it feel so nice and soft? Now, once your dough has come together like this, you can lose your big bowl. And now divide it in half. And that's because we're only really going to be working with half of the dough at once, and you want to keep the other half cold. You don't want it to overheat, otherwise it's going to be difficult to work with and cut out into your shapes. And if you wanted to prep this dough ahead of time, like 1 or 2 days, you could wrap it all in plastic wrap and keep it in the refrigerator. But right now, we're going to be working with half, so keep half of it on your counter and grab some plastic wrap for the other half. So pat this out into a disc. It'll make it easier to roll out when the time comes to roll it out. And grab a piece of plastic wrap and wrap it tightly so that no air can get in. And now you can stick this in the refrigerator for later. So clear your work surface, sprinkle it with a little bit of flour so that the dough doesn't stick. And then you can also sprinkle the top with a little flour too. Pat it out, and then grab your rolling pin and roll it out until it's flat and about 1/4 inch thick. And the way that I like to roll it out is I'm using the weight of the rolling pin, and every so often I'm gonna rotate it just so that I'm making sure that it doesn't stick to the work surface, and also to ensure that I'm rolling it out evenly. How are you guys doing with your dough? Isn't this a fun, satisfying process? I love working with cookie dough. It's like working with clay. We're ready to cut out our circles. This dough is gonna be enough to do 2 of each of my different sizes of cookie cutters. So I'm gonna place my cookie cutter right up against the edge of the dough so that I can get the maximum amount of cookies. I'm going all the way around the edge, making sure to have minimal dough scraps. The less times that we re-roll the scraps, the better the texture of the cookies will be. If you overwork your dough, they might get a little tough. And if you don't have circles, you can use squares, you can use stars for this. You can really cut out any shapes that you want. Now, once you're done cutting out your shapes, grab an offset spatula. If you don't have a small offset spatula, just the smallest spatula that you have, or even a butter knife, and use that to get underneath the cookie and then transfer it to a parchment-lined baking sheet. And when you're placing these on the baking sheet, allow at least 1 inch in between them, because that's gonna allow the cookies to bake evenly on all sides. Now these are ready to bake. Bake them at 350 for about 8 to 10 minutes until they're lightly golden around the edges. And while these bake, let's just clean up and then make our frosting. This frosting is a classic American buttercream. It is so easy to make, and it's really rich and sweet. You ready? So grab the remaining softened butter and add that to your big bowl. And then also add 2 cups of powdered sugar. This is really the type of thing that you could just eyeball, because it does not have to be exact. Now slowly turn on your mixer. Once the powdered sugar starts to incorporate into the butter, you can increase the speed. Once this is going, you can add a pinch of kosher salt, and this will help bring out all the flavors and just balance out that sweetness. I started making these a few years ago. I was going through a phase of making mini cakes all the time. Itsy bitsy cute little layer cakes. And then one day I started making the layers out of cookies, and they were so much fun. They were really stable, and they were great for cookie swaps, and you actually get 5 cookies in one. So now they've become a tradition. And you can increase the speed. Once your frosting is looking smooth and creamy, you can add your vanilla and a little almond if you want. I'll add my vanilla, and then a little bit of almond. And those 2 flavors together are so delicious. And to me, they just scream holidays. Also grab some heavy cream. Heavy cream is gonna bring everything together and smooth it out and make the texture so much creamier. I'm gonna add a couple of tablespoons. And again, this is something that can be eyeballed too. And now I'll mix this all to combine. And if you don't have heavy cream, you can also use a tablespoon or 2 of whole milk. Now lastly, add your food coloring. We should use green because it's Christmas trees, and I like using this mossy green color. Add a few drops. You can always add more, but it's difficult to take away, so start with a little and then add more until you get the color that you want. How is your frosting looking? Are you smelling your cookies yet? Let's check on them. These are perfect. They are set. They're still pale, so I know they're gonna be a little soft. Okay, I'm gonna let these cool while I finish up my frosting. Now grab your piping bag that's fitted with the tip. And if you don't have a piping bag, you can use a zip top bag with the corner snipped off. Fold the sides down. And I always find it easiest to put it in a big cup or a big measuring cup like this. And that way you'll have both hands free to fill your bag. And grab your spatula and scrape all the frosting into the piping bag. Just plop it right in. We can lose the food coloring and the extracts too. Whenever I'm decorating, I like to have a clean surface. I don't want to have any distractions. Now, grab some serving plates, or I'm gonna use cute little cake stands. Aren't these adorable? Extra special for the holidays. Grab your decorations, so some sprinkles or candies. We are ready to assemble. So fold up the top of your piping bag and smush all the frosting down toward the tip. And as you're doing so, give the top a twist so that the frosting doesn't come out the other end. Add a little pop of frosting to your cake stands so that the cookies don't move around. This is gonna act as your glue. Grab the biggest cookies, stick them down. And then add a layer of frosting. A nice thick layer of frosting. And then smush on the next biggest cookie. Like that. And now do it with the remaining cookies. Just like that. These are gonna be really big cookie cakes. Delicious. We'll go right on top. And the last layer of our little cartoon Christmas trees. And then you can finish with a layer of frosting. And then, of course, sprinkles to decorate. Oh, we should use a yellow ball to act as the star of the tree. Yeah. Oh, do you guys all have sprinkle tweezers in the kitchen? You should. It'll help with this. And just decorate your Christmas trees however you want. Have fun with it. How cute are these? They look just like little cartoon Christmas trees. Okay, I'm gonna taste one. They're soft and sweet, and the frosting has the perfect amount of almond in it. This is just how a Christmas cookie should taste. Okay, sorry Santa, I'm not saving any for you. I'm making my Kung Pao chicken. It's nutty and a little spicy, and it comes together really quickly. To start, I'm gonna do a quick marinade with my chicken. I have 1.5 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken thigh here that's been chopped into bite-sized pieces. For the marinade, I'm gonna combine 2 teaspoons of cornstarch, and ultimately, this is gonna thicken the sauce and make it nice and glossy. A tablespoon of soy sauce, and then a tablespoon of rice vinegar. And the acidity from the vinegar is gonna tenderize the meat. We'll whisk this together and then pour it right over the chicken. I'll give it a toss and I'll just let it sit aside while I put together my stir-fry sauce. This sauce is really flavorful. It's pretty salty, which I love, and it's super simple. I'm gonna do 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar, 2 tablespoons of hoisin sauce, which is sweet and a little fermenty. It's one of my favorite ingredients. A teaspoon of sugar, and then I'll grate in 2 cloves of garlic, and I'll grate in my ginger, and I'll add some citrusy notes. Beautiful. I'll whisk this together. My sauce and my chicken are prepped. I'll get going on my veggies now. I like to get all of my veggie chopping out of the way before I start cooking because with stir fry, once things hit the pan, they go fast. I'm gonna chop up a red bell pepper. I'll get some nice 1-inch pieces. It's a lot of nice color. Some green beans. I'll cut these into thirds. And some scallions. I'll add most of them to the veggies, but I'm gonna reserve some of the greens to garnish on top. And I'm cutting it on a bias because we're getting fancy. And that's it. Everything's prepped now. I'm gonna get cooking. I'll add 2 tablespoons of oil to my big skillet, and it's a hot skillet. It's what you need for stir fry. And then I'll add my chicken. It's Christmas Eve, and I'm so excited. We are carrying on our time-honored tradition of feasting on Chinese food to celebrate. I'm ready to add my veggies. I'll dump all of them right in. I'll cook the veggies until they're crisp tender, just a few minutes, and then I'll grab my peanuts and Szechuan peppercorns. Szechuan peppercorn is fragrant and a little lemony, and I can always tell that I'm eating something with it in it because it makes your mouth kind of tingly in a really cool way. I'm gonna add half a teaspoon. If you don't have this, you can leave it out or add loads of black pepper. And then half a cup of roasted peanuts, which are signature Kung Pao. They add that delicious, crunchy nuttiness. And then a couple of dried red chili peppers for heat. This is looking delicious. I'm gonna add the sauce now and just simmer it until it thickens. Oh, this smells so good. I'm gonna plate it up. Oh my gosh, I'm getting so hungry. I'm gonna garnish it with some scallions and a few more crunchy peanuts. Okay, I'm gonna taste. I'm really getting that ginger. I am making my rosemary rib roast. It is a juicy, tender, perfectly cooked piece of meat, and I'm serving it with an herby mayo. This is a 3-bone rib roast, 6 pounds, and I'm gonna sprinkle it all over with kosher salt. I'll refrigerate this now, uncovered, bone side down, for 4 hours to let it work its magic. I can't wait. My rib roast has been curing in salt for 4 hours, and I've allowed it to come to room temperature so that it cooks evenly. It's almost ready for the oven, but first I've got to rub it down with an herby mixture to enhance its flavor. I'll start by chopping up some fresh rosemary, which goes brilliantly with this meat. I'll chop up 1 tablespoon. I'll get this into my bowl, along with 2 cloves of finely chopped garlic, some black pepper, and I'll bring this together with some olive oil. Give it a little mix. I'll set this aside, and then I'll cut a crosshatch pattern into the roast, and that's gonna crisp up and get really gorgeous. To do that, I've got my sharp knife here, and I'm gonna cut parallel lines about 2 inches apart, just into the fat. I don't wanna go down into the meat. Scoring the fat like this will really help the herbs penetrate and infuse it with goodness. All right, now I'll shift this and do the same thing with lines going perpendicular to the ones that I just cut. Okay, I'll rub this down. Getting in here with my hands. Rubbing into the cuts I just made. Alrighty. I'll get this in the oven at 250 degrees for 3 to 3.5 hours until the internal temperature is 135 degrees for a radiant medium doneness. My mouth is watering already. The rosemary is wafting through the air. I'm gonna check on my rib roast. It's been going low and slow for the past 3 hours, and it smells incredible.
I could smell this all day long. I kind of have been, I guess. Looks so juicy. Now what this needs is a golden crust of flavor. I've got a cast iron pan here heating up to medium high, so it's quite hot. There's some oil in here as well. It's crust time, baby. Here I go. I'll sear this fat side down first. I'll let this sear now on medium high until it's golden brown, a few minutes per side. That's looking good, and it's smelling outrageous. I'm gonna get this out of the pan, and I wanna allow this to rest for a good 30 minutes so that those juices can redistribute. And in that time, I'm gonna make a creamy sauce for serving it with. I'm taking the best parts of a gremolata, so a bunch of herbs, and making them a little indulgent with mayonnaise. And I'll combine it with 2 tablespoons of fresh ground horseradish. I'll zest in a lemon, and loads of chopped parsley, loads of chopped chives. Bring some beautiful greenery to the dish, but also provide that freshness. A little salt and pepper. And I'll mix this up, and that's it. Easy peasy. Okay, I'll set this aside and cut up my meat. Using the bones as a guide, I'll just go right in between. Oh yeah, that's a big slice. And then one more slice. Okay, and I'll plate this up with the gremolata on the side. Hello. Sprinkle with some flaky salt. And get my gremolata into this cute little dish. Okay, this is one big honkin' piece of meat.
For dinner, I am making the juiciest, stickiest, crispiest Peking chicken.
I got started on this yesterday. I loosened the skin from the meat to allow some air to get underneath the skin, and then I also dry brined it with kosher salt, black pepper, and some Chinese 5-spice powder, and then I stuck it in the fridge overnight uncovered so that the seasoning could penetrate the meat and then also allow that skin to dry out so that it gets crispy. To get the chicken ready for the oven, I'm gonna crack open a can of beer. Let's get this party started right. I'm pouring out 1 cup of it, which I'll add in later. And I'm setting it in a cast iron skillet. This is going to be sort of a stand for me to put the chicken on so that when it roasts, the heat gets circulated all around and the skin gets crispy. And then it'll also steam the chicken from the inside so that that meat stays juicy while the skin is crisp. I'll roast at 400 degrees for an hour. I won't be fully done cooking at that point, but I'll be ready for some glaze then. My chicken is almost ready to come out of the oven, so I'll whip up the glaze, which is going to give that chicken skin this sweet, sticky, shiny coating. I'll start with 3 tablespoons of soy sauce, half a cup of hoisin sauce, 2 tablespoons of honey, which will help to caramelize that exterior, a teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1.5 teaspoons of Chinese 5-spice powder, a tablespoon of oil to add some richness, a teaspoon of toasted sesame oil, and all of these heavy, heavy flavors need some brightness, so I'll squeeze in the juice of half a lime and grate in a teaspoon of fresh ginger for some zing. When I combine this, I'm gonna reserve some of it to add on as a sauce at the end, and the other half will be used to brush the outside of the chicken. Let me check on my bird. Being careful so it doesn't tip over. That chicken is already crispy on the outside. I'll get my glaze and brush this chicken lavishly all over. Chicken skin is so good. Oh, do you hear that? It sounds crispy. So Peking is actually just another spelling, an older spelling of Beijing. So that's where Peking duck comes from. This looks beautiful. Not holding back with the glaze here. Like it just got back from the beach. Still has some tanning oil on. When this glaze drips down onto the skillet, I don't want it to burn, so I have my reserved cup of beer here that I'll pour right in to prevent the glaze from burning, and it'll also add a bit more moisture right at the end of its cooking time. Okay, carefully back into the oven this goes for another 20 minutes until the internal temperature is 165 degrees and external is so shiny, I'm gonna have to get my sunglasses. Ta-da-da. This chicken's looking good. I'm gonna wait to carve until right before I serve, but I'm having to take a taste right now because this smell is pulling me in. That is like the queen of chicken skins. It's sweet, it's salty, it's a little chewy, it's crisp. I'm doing something crazy this year. I'm skipping the turkey and I'm making my orange marmalade glazed ham. It's juicy and smoky and has this great caramelized sweet skin. Also, it's wildly easy to make. I just score the skin, roast it, and glaze it. That's it. It's perfect for any first timers for Thanksgiving or people like me who just want to sit and relax and watch the parade all day. So I'm starting with the most challenging part, which is scoring it. And I'm doing that because it's gonna look really nice with this gorgeous diamond pattern. And then it's also gonna catch the marmalade and create some nice caramelized edges. So to do that, I have a sharp knife and I'm creating some shallow lines that are parallel and diagonal. I only wanna go about 1/3 of an inch down because I don't wanna go too far into the meat and have it split apart too much. So do them 1 inch apart, go all the way over the equator and all the way down. So I've got all my lines going in one direction and I'll turn it to make it easy to do my lines going in the other direction. I didn't actually eat a lot of ham growing up, but when I moved here, Nick's mom, Roxanne, would make a ham for every special occasion. And I fell in love with it. The leftover ham after those dinners was what I looked forward to. And I do so many things with leftover ham. I put it on pizza, put it in eggs and quiches. It's so versatile. Dare I say more versatile than leftover turkey? Sorry, turkey. Okay, I'm done with my scoring. I'll place this into my roasting pan, flat side down. And this is about an 8 to 10 pound ham. So just enough for me and Nick and Bernie. It's bone in and fully smoked. I'll fill my pan with 1/2 inch of water, and that's gonna steam the ham and make it extra juicy. Great. I'll cover it in foil. And this is gonna go in the oven at 325 for an hour. And then I'm gonna take the foil off and give it another hour so that the top can get crispy. And if at any point the water has evaporated from the bottom of the roasting pan, I'll just add a little more. My ham is roasting away in the oven and it smells spectacular. But to level it up, I'm gonna make an orange marmalade glaze that'll be sweet and sticky and give a nice glossy shine on the ham. I'll start with 1/2 cup of brown sugar. And this is gonna caramelize on the corners of those scored diamonds that I cut. 1/2 cup of grainy mustard because ham and mustard is like PB&J. And 1/2 cup of orange marmalade. The orangey flavor is such a nice pairing with the smoky ham. I'll balance out all this sweetness with 2 tablespoons of sherry vinegar. And I'll spice things up with a teaspoon of ground coriander, which has some earthy citrus notes that'll go so well with the orange. These spices just add a little extra something special. It's Thanksgiving. And then a teaspoon of ginger. And then 1/2 teaspoon of ground allspice. Allspice is so autumnal. It's perfect for this season. Some black pepper. And then I wanna add some of the juices from the bottom of the ham pan, so I'm gonna get that out. It smells so smoky. I'm gonna increase the heat of my oven to 400 degrees. And I'm gonna add about 1/4 cup of the juices to the glaze. And the juices are salty and hammy and so good. And I'll whisk this together. There are a lot of good flavors in here. I'll brush on my glaze liberally because I wanted to get into these folds. It's just gonna enhance the ham and make it the best version of itself. Thanksgiving is definitely one of my favorite holidays. It kind of signifies the end of the busy harvest season, so it's time for Nick to slow down and we get more family time and we can travel. And also, Thanksgiving is way more special now that we have our little turkey. I mean, ham. Bernie's definitely more of a ham than a turkey.
Okay, this is gonna go back in the oven now at 400 degrees for about 45 minutes, and I'll brush it with the glaze a couple of times throughout so it can get extra glossy. And today we're making one of my favorite holiday cookies, rugelach. They're buttery and flaky, and the dough is a little tangy because there's cream cheese in them. We're gonna be making one dough into 2 cookies with our chocolate halva filling and orange marmalade and walnut filling. Halva is a sesame candy. It is so good. It has this crumbly texture, and when it bakes and intertwines with the chocolate, it's gonna be delicious. I think that we should all taste the halva to make sure that it's okay. Oh yeah, sweet, sesame-y, delicious. Rugelach became a holiday cookie tradition for me when I realized that there are so many Christmas cookies around the holidays. We've got to step up the Hanukkah cookie game. So rugelach, which is a Jewish cookie, is something that has become somewhat of a tradition for me. And these are inspired by the rugelach that my mom would make for me growing up. She is the OG rugelach maker in the family. So if you're baking along with me, make sure that your oven is preheated to 375. Have some baking sheets ready to go that are lined with parchment, and make sure you have an appetite for cookies. So first, grab the bowl of your stand mixer. And if you don't have a stand mixer, you can use a big bowl with an electric hand mixer. And to this bowl, add 2½ cups of all-purpose flour and 1/4 cup of sugar. One thing I like about this dough is that there's actually not that much sugar in it. It's not too sweet, and it really allows the flavors of the filling to shine. Also, add a ½ teaspoon of kosher salt. And those are the dry ingredients. So put it back on your stand mixer, or if you're mixing with a hand mixer, just give it a little mix. Okay. And now grab 1 cup of butter and 8 ounces of cream cheese. Now it's important to have the butter and the cream cheese cold because that's what's gonna help create the flakiness of the rugelach. You want there to be little bits of butter and cream cheese in the dough still intact because when they bake, they're gonna melt out and create those pockets which give you those nice flakes. So first chop up the butter into little pieces, and to do that, first chop it lengthwise down the center. Flip it over and do the same thing, chopping lengthwise down the center. And now the other way, first chop it in half, and then in half again on both sides, and then cut each of these 4 pieces in half. So you have a bunch of little cubes of butter, and they're all evenly sized. And do the same thing with the other stick of butter. So first chop it lengthwise in half, flip it on the side, chop it lengthwise in half again. And then widthwise, chop it in half. Chop both of those halves in half. And now chop the quarters in half. So now you have a bunch of uniformly sized butter cubes. Use this technique for cutting whenever you're making pie crust, anything where you want the butter to incorporate really evenly. So sprinkle these right over the flour mixture and get an even distribution. You don't want any larger clumps, like if you have 2 pieces stuck together, just break them apart. And scatter them all over the flour. And try to work as quickly as you can so that the butter doesn't soften. And now chop up your cream cheese. Cream cheese is so much softer, it's a little bit more difficult to chop up into those little cubes, so do the best you can. It doesn't need to be perfect. We can just do slightly larger chunks of cream cheese. So to me, the hallmark of a good rugelach is that slight tanginess, which comes from cream cheese. I just love that little bit of sour flavor. It's so good. So pretty much, we're making pie dough, but with cream cheese and a little extra sugar. That's what rugelach dough is. Now, once your cream cheese is chopped up, distribute these little cubes just like you did the butter. Now that the flour mixture is in the bowl and the butter and the cream cheese is in, turn it on low to let the butter and the cream cheese incorporate. While this is mixing, let's separate our eggs. We're only gonna use 2 egg yolks, not the egg whites. So get 2 bowls, crack an egg, break it apart, and then transfer the yolk back and forth between each half of the shell to let the egg white fall down into this bowl, and then you'll add the egg yolk to the other bowl. So again, crack the egg in half, separate the 2 halves of the shells, and then transfer the egg yolk back and forth between the shells so that the egg white falls down and you're left with just the yolk. And if the yolk breaks, that's okay. Just try to get most of it into your yolk bowl. Once the mixture is crumbly, you can add your egg yolks, and then also add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Oh, this looks perfect. Once it comes together in a big clump like this, you can use your hands to finish off bringing it together. So get it off of the mixer. It smells so good. Now use your hands to bring the dough together into a ball and dump it out onto your counter, and you can get rid of your big bowl and the beater at this time. And now, since we're gonna be making 2 different kinds of rugelach, divide the dough in half. And you can just eyeball it and pat these into discs. Patting it out into discs is gonna help make it easier to roll out when it comes time. Now let's grab our plastic wrap. You wanna make sure that they're airtight so that no fridge smells get in. You also don't want the dough to dry out. And this is a dough that you can make up to a few days in advance. Just keep it in the fridge. Now we want our dough to refrigerate for a minimum of 1 hour, so press pause now, come back when you're ready, and when you're back, get your chocolate chips and halva ready for one filling and the orange marmalade and walnuts ready for the other. All right, let's get started on melting the chocolate for our chocolate halva rugelach. If you want to skip this one and just go straight on to the orange marmalade rugelach with walnuts, you can jump ahead. But if you want to make both like me, I'm here for you. So make sure that your double boiler is set up, and that's a pot of simmering water with a heat-safe bowl set on top of it. And using a double boiler will ensure that your chocolate doesn't burn. Pour 3/4 of a cup of milk chocolate chips into your bowl. And remember how I said that the rugelach dough isn't actually that sweet? This is why I like using milk chocolate, because it has that extra sweetness. Now grab a rubber spatula and stir the chocolate as it melts so that it melts smoothly and evenly. And if you don't want to use a double boiler, you could also melt your chocolate in a microwave. Stir after every 30 seconds until it's smooth. Around the holidays, Nick and I go to at least 3 cookie swaps. So we have boxes of cookies just lying around the kitchen. And Nick always goes for these rugelach. How's your chocolate looking? Is it melted? If it is, you can take the heat off and then go grab half of your dough. Grab a handful of flour and dust your work surface so that the dough doesn't stick. And now we're gonna roll a nice big rectangle out of our dough. Let's dust the top of the dough with flour too. Grab your rolling pin. Or if you don't have a rolling pin, you can use a wine bottle. And now start working the dough, rolling it out, and rotate it every so often to make sure that it's not sticking to your counter. And just work it into a very wide rectangle. And every so often you can give the dough a little wiggle to make sure that it's not sticking to your work surface. And if it is, dust the bottom with a little more flour. So we're going for a rectangle that's 18 inches wide by 9 inches tall. Get out your kitchen rulers. And you can measure. So this is this is 9 inches, and I have a little ways to go to make it wider. The way that my mom makes rugelach is she rolls the dough into a big circle and then cuts pie wedges and then rolls those up into crescents. So if you really like this recipe, you can try making those shapes as well. All right, how is your dough looking? Is it about 9 by 18? If it is, you can start spreading the chocolate onto the dough. So grab an offset spatula and plop the chocolate right onto the dough. How good does that look? Resist the urge to eat all of the chocolate right now. And now use your offset spatula to spread it in a thin, even layer, but I want you to leave a 1-inch border along the top, and that's gonna be used to seal the roll of cookies shut. And work kind of quickly too, because the cold dough does have the ability to firm up the thin sheet of chocolate. So just spread it back and forth. How gorgeous does that look? Isn't this process satisfying? I love making rugelach as much as I love eating rugelach. Spread it all the way to the bottom edge and the side edges, and then leave that border up top. Okay, now grab your halva, just sprinkle it all over the chocolate. And if you guys don't have halva, you can skip it, or you can add something else. You can add chopped nuts, or even toasted sesame seeds. And now we're gonna make an egg wash. So grab a small bowl and an egg. Crack the egg into your bowl. And then add a splash of water and beat it up. And this egg wash is gonna act as the glue that's gonna hold our roll of rugelach shut. And now let's grab a pastry brush and brush a thin layer on that exposed edge of the dough. I'm so excited to eat these. And now, starting at the edge closest to us, let's roll up the dough into a nice tight jelly roll. And this is going to make a really pretty swirly shape, because ultimately what we're gonna do is chop this roll into our individual rugelach cookies. Now when you get to the end, you want it to sit seam side down. So let the whole roll sit on top of the seam and give it a little squeeze so that it can seal shut. And now what we wanna do is carefully transfer this roll to one of our baking sheets. How did you do? If it's just too big to handle, you can always cut it in half and then transfer both halves to the cookie sheet. And now let's refrigerate this until the chocolate firms up, and that's gonna help us get really clean, beautiful swirls when we cut our cookies. It's time for our second flavor of rugelach. Let's make our marmalade filling. Grab a small bowl and some orange marmalade and add 3/4 of a cup to your bowl. And now let's spice it up for the holidays. Let's add a teaspoon of cinnamon, and this is something you can just eyeball. And gotta have cloves with orange. A little bit of cloves go a long way, so just add a pinch or two. Are you smelling that? It smells just like the holidays. And now mix to combine. Super easy. Now grab the other half of your dough. And just like we did with the chocolate halva rugelach, we're gonna roll this out into a big rectangle. Dust your surface with a little flour so that the dough doesn't stick. And the top of the dough too. And now roll it out. So when I went off to college for music school, my mom would send me huge care packages full of her rugelach. And it was the best stress reliever after a long day of practicing xylophone. It always reminded me of home. Gradually roll out your rectangle and be sure to roll it out evenly so that it's all an even thickness. And don't be afraid to dust it with as much flour as it takes so that the dough doesn't stick. We're ready to add the filling. So grab another offset spatula, or you can clean off your chocolatey one. and spread a thin, even layer of the marmalade right onto the dough. Just like we did before with the chocolate, all the way to each side and to the bottom, but leave that top border. And now grab your toasted chopped walnuts. These are gonna add great nuttiness and texture, and sprinkle them all over the marmalade. If you don't like nuts, you can skip them, or you can use any nut you want. Just make sure to toast them first to bring out the flavors. And now brush with egg wash. So a thin, even layer on this top exposed edge will be just enough to seal the rugelach shut. So if you scrolled ahead, this egg wash is just 1 large egg beaten with a splash of water. And this is gonna act as the glue that holds our rugelach rolls shut. And now starting with the edge closest to you, roll this up. And this is gonna lock all of the filling in. And then when we slice up our cookies, they're gonna be beautiful swirls. If it's sticking to your work surface, you can just help it up with your fingers or a knife or an offset spatula. And now place the roll seam side down, give it a little squeeze to seal it. Grab your cookie sheet and gently transfer the roll to the cookie sheet. And now let's stick this in the fridge to firm up. And in the meantime, our chocolate roll should be firm enough to slice and then bake. Oh yeah, if it's firm to the touch, it is ready. So transfer it back to your cutting board. And before we slice, we've got to decorate it. It is the holidays. So first, brush with your egg wash again. And this is gonna make the top shiny, and it's also gonna help our sprinkles stick. Sprinkle the tops with a little bit of flaky salt. This little bite of salt is just the perfect touch with the chocolate. And now, grab your sprinkles and go to town. These sprinkles are so pretty. Just sprinkle them liberally right on top, and the egg wash is gonna help the sprinkles stick. Just pile them on. And now we're gonna slice our roll into cookies. So grab a sharp knife and cut 1.5-inch slices. I get my ruler out for this. If they're too thin, they could topple over while they're baking in the oven. So it's best to err on the side of too wide than too thin. Oh, look at that perfect roll. Isn't that gorgeous? Let's keep on going. I think this is my favorite part, other than eating them. And now transfer the rolls to your baking sheet and allow at least 1 inch in between each of them so that they have room to bake evenly on all sides. Let's do 3 rolls of 3. Rows. I've been saying rolls so much. Now these are gonna bake at 375 for about 24 minutes until they're golden brown on top. And while these bake, we can keep working on our orange marmalade rugelach. So just like we did with the chocolate halva rugelach, we're gonna brush the top of this with egg wash. And it should be pretty cool to the touch as well. So brush the top with egg wash. And now the top of these will get a little bit of salt, just like the chocolate halva. I've got to have a little salt on my sweets. And some sugar. This just adds the perfect extra hit of sweetness. And grab your ground walnuts. And pile them on top. And these are gonna get nice and toasty in the oven. And they'll add a really beautiful crunch on top. Ugh, the flavor combination in this rugelach, orange, clove, cinnamon, and walnuts, it's gonna be so good. And just like we did with the chocolate halva rugelach, let's slice into 1.5-inch slices. These are gonna bake up so beautifully. Are you guys excited as I am to eat these? Oh, this one at the end is gonna be a massive one. Dibs on that one. Let's transfer these to the baking sheet. Allow about 1 inch of space in between all of them so that they can get baked evenly on all sides. And now these are gonna bake at 375 for about 24 minutes until they're golden brown all over. It already smells like the holidays in here. I love cookie season. Does it smell so good in your kitchen right now? It smells so good in my kitchen. We should check on the rugelach. Ah! These look perfect. Oh, smelling that butter, smelling the cinnamon. Can't wait to eat these. I love the way the chocolate swirls stayed intact and the sprinkles got slightly melty. So beautiful. And the orange marmalade is so shiny and pretty. Yum! Our rugelach look incredible. 2 different cookies from one dough. Shall we taste them? Both? Yes. I don't even know. I feel like, they're so buttery and flaky, and the outside is crisp, but the insides are still soft, just the way I like them. Oh man, I hope you guys enjoy these as much as I'm enjoying them right now. Happy holidays.
For a super special Scandinavian Christmas dessert, I'm baking up a recipe that's been in Nick's family for generations. It is the Hagen family bløtkake. It's a Norwegian cream cake that's light and spongy and decorated with fresh whipped cream and berries. It's very celebratory. Okay, I've got my 5 eggs. I'll add 2 cups of sugar and get this onto my mixer. And I'll get this beating for a few good minutes until it's pale and fluffy, which will give the cake nice structure. All right. Okay. Wow, I can't even imagine what a workout it would have been for Nick's ancestors to make this before they had a stand mixer. I'll turn this back on and drizzle in ½ a cup of water. Okay. I'll grab my dry ingredients. This is 2½ cups of all-purpose flour and 2 heaping teaspoons of baking powder. And I'm gonna sift these in, which is important to ensure that there are no lumps of dry ingredients. And some kosher salt, which is the only addition I have made to the original. And I'll fold this all together, being careful not to deflate all of the air that I just beat into the eggs. This is such an easy cake to make. It all comes together in one bowl. Doesn't get much better than that. Look at how glossy this is. That's a good cake batter. Pagans, they knew. Okay, ready for the cake pan. I have a 9-inch springform cake pan that I've greased and lined on the bottom with parchment. And the springform one is nice because it's so high. I'm baking this all in one pan, and then when it comes out of the oven, I'll slice it into 2 layers. Look at that. This cake takes a while to bake. I'm gonna start checking it at 1 hour, and I'll know that it's done when it's golden on top and a toothpick stuck into the center comes out clean, and it's gonna bake at 325 degrees. My cake baked up beautifully, and now it's cooling. And now to finish it off, I'll make some vanilla whipped cream. I'll start with 3 cups of heavy cream that's nice and cold. Sweeten it with 1/4 cup of powdered sugar and splash in some vanilla extract. And I'll beat this to stiff peaks.
Okay, looking good.
I'll set this aside while I prepare my cranberries. I've got some fresh cranberries here. I'll toss them with some sugar. My cake is cool and ready to assemble. Dun, 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 dun. Hello. I'll carefully cut this into 2 layers. And I'm gonna rotate this as I go. Just trying my very best to keep an even line. And as I saw, I'll work my way into the center. And now I'll make a great big cake sandwich with a layer of whipped cream and cranberries in the middle. And then I'll cover the outside with whipped cream and adorn with more cranberries and some fresh rosemary, just because it's pretty. Happy holidays.
My potato latkes with caramelized onion sour cream are to die for. They're crispy and golden on the outside, but thick enough so that the innards are like still a little creamy. You're getting multiple textures in each bite. I'm gonna eat so many of these. To start, I'm shredding up some potatoes in my food processor. This is the quickest, easiest way to do them, and I don't even peel my potatoes. I love the texture of the peels, and they're really pretty that way. I like using russets because they're really sturdy. They're gonna hold up to all that frying. I'm also gonna add 2 onions that I'm gonna add right to the food processor. I'll quarter them first so that they fit. And you can shred potatoes by hand, but it is much faster to just do this in the food processor. Filling the onion juices in the air. For extra flavor, I'm also gonna add 4 cloves of garlic. I'll just toss these right in. Now, one step that is key to a crispy latke is drawing the moisture out of the potatoes. So I've got a strainer here with some cheesecloth over it, and it's set over a bowl to catch all the moisture. I'm gonna pour these into my strainer with the cheesecloth in it. Look at those beautiful thick shreds of potato. And now we'll toss this with salt, and the salt is gonna help draw that moisture out. I'm making sure that the salt gets evenly distributed, and just a few good big pinches will do. I'm gonna let this sit now for 30 minutes to let the moisture come out of the potatoes. Be patient with this step. It's worth it in the name of a crispy latke. My mom's the OG latke expert of the family.
Oh, thank you.
So will you help me make these?
Of course.
They should be ready to go. We can mix up the remaining mixture.
Okay.
So in this big bowl, we're gonna add 4 eggs.
Okay.
Do you wanna grab a fork and you can mix them as I crack?
Absolutely.
You wanna add the potato mixture.
Okay.
You can dump that right in. I'm gonna add some lemon juice, and the lemon juice is gonna prevent the potato from turning gray.
And also add that nice hit of acid, which is the best.
Next, I'm gonna chop up some scallions to add. You wanna season with some pepper.
Okay.
And there's still a lot of salt left over from when the potatoes
Okay, so
drained,
no
so
more
we don't
salt.
need to add more salt. I'm gonna grab the breadcrumbs.
Okay.
Let me grab that measuring cup. I'm gonna add 2/3 of a cup of panko breadcrumbs. I have my oil heating up here. So to test that the oil is hot enough, you can just add a strand of potato, and if it sizzles, it's ready. I'm gonna add a big scoop of the potato mixture to the oil. I'll smash them down, and then I always like to use my spatula to help shape them into a round puck. My mom is finishing frying the latkes, and now they just need a topping. I got a head start this morning with some caramelized onions, which were super easy. I just added a little oil in a pan over medium-high heat, tossed in a yellow onion with a little salt and sugar, and cooked down for about 45 minutes until they were deep golden brown and sweet. Then I added a few cloves of minced garlic and cooked that with the onions until it became fragrant and irresistible. And now I'm gonna add about a cup of sour cream. I'm gonna add some onion powder to the sour cream, which is gonna punch up that oniony flavor. And then I'll also season with salt and pepper.
These look amazing. Look at that. Look at that color.
They look incredible. I cannot wait to eat those.
They're beautiful.
Got a little salt on this one.
What a team we make.
I'm gonna finish the sour cream with some chopped scallions.
Gorgeous.
Oh yeah, this looks great.
I love that they're thicker than the ones we used to make. This is so much better.
Yeah, hockey puck size is the perfect size.
Definitely.
I am making scalloped potatoes. They're gonna be cheesy and creamy. To start, I'm thinly slicing 2 pounds of Yukon Gold potatoes, and I'm slicing about 1/8 to 1/4 inch slices. All my potatoes are sliced. I'll set these aside and then make my creamy, cheesy sauce. I've got my skillet heated here. I'm gonna add a couple of tablespoons of butter, and I'm gonna let this melt. I'll add 3 tablespoons of flour, and that's gonna combine with the butter to create a roux, and that's gonna thicken the milk to create that rich sauce. I'll whisk the flour into the butter and let it cook for about a minute so that the flour flavor can dissipate. Now I've got 1.5 cups of whole milk here, and I'm gonna add it really gradually, whisking continuously to allow it to combine and thicken. And I wanna whisk it constantly to ensure the smoothest, velvetiest texture. That's looking good. So I know this is thick enough when it coats the back of a spoon. Oh yeah, look how beautiful that is. Just like that. I'm gonna season it with salt and pepper. And then I'm gonna get some nutmeg. Just a little bit of freshly grated nutmeg adds a perfect hit of warmth. I'm gonna grate in about 1/4 teaspoon. I've got Gruyere and ham. Gruyere cheese is funky and fancy. I'm gonna add a couple ounces of this to the sauce and let it melt. It smells so good. And potatoes are so mild, they're like a canvas for the cheese. So they need some strong flavors encasing them. I'm ready to assemble. I've got my cast iron skillet, and I've coated on the inside with some butter, and I'm gonna add a layer of potatoes. And I'm not gonna get too fancy or fussy with this. It's just gonna be a rustic layer. These are gonna melt together when they bake and soak up this cheese sauce. And then I'm gonna season them with a good pinch of salt. I'll top with half of my cream sauce. It's just gonna soak right in those layers. Let me spread it around to make sure all the potatoes are coated. And next, all of the ham. Sometimes I think that because there's ham in this, it can be a full meal, just this. But then my conscience kicks in. Some chives for flavor and color. And then the rest of my potatoes, and I'm just spreading them all the way to the edge. This is a great dish to make in advance and bring to a party. It's a crowd pleaser. Everybody always loves the scalloped potatoes, as long as they're salty enough. I finish with the rest of my cream sauce, a sprinkling of that funky Gruyere, and some more chopped chives. Oh, it's so pretty. I could just eat this whole pan. Beautiful. I'll cover this. And now this is gonna bake at 350 degrees for about an hour, and I'm gonna take the foil off for the last 20 minutes so that I can get golden brown and crispy on top. I am ready for this. Oh yeah. That is a beautiful potato situation. Look at how golden it is, and it's so melty. I'm gonna taste it. Oh, it's so creamy. It is so flavorful and comforting.